So we have Tyler Nelson with us with FLYRS Foundation. Thanks for joining us today, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me come out.
Yeah, and you and I, well, my kids have been doing FLYRS. I think we're on our fourth or fifth year in FLYRS. So kind of got connected. I don't even remember how we initially found it. Like we were, I think, looking around to get our kids started into something, and then connected with you, connected with sponsorship, and then now participating in multiple ways here, getting kids going. But how long has, so for those of you listening, FLYRS is the youth bike club for Flagstaff. Are there other, as far as spanning, I'm probably loading too many questions all in one race here.
No worries.
As far as age-wise, it's starting at Strider, like or balance bike, right?
Yeah, push bikes.
Push bikes at like what, 2 or 3?
Yeah, 2 years old.
At 2 years old, is there any other bike program that you know out there doing that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
To answer. So not in the as comprehensive of a fashion that we do it in.
Yeah.
Covering all the different age groups from push bikers at 2 all the way up to high school.
Yeah.
There used to be very few programs even in the country that would get the younger kids, but now actually a lot of the FUSD schools got a Strider program. There was some funding available where they're able to get grant funds to get like the push bike programs in their schools.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of schools that have it in the PE programs.
Yeah.
So now there's actually a lot of schools that are doing the push bike program through that.
Okay.
Which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
But in terms of what we do, like offering every single age group all the way from pushers up to high school, there's very few programs like in the whole country that do what we do. Durango Devo is another one at Durango. They do it. We kind of modeled ours loosely after them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's it's so much. Like in you and I were talking like FLYRS. This fall season is just launched, and then when I was just on the sponsorship end, and then being part of like coaching aspects and seeing behind the scenes, and like there is so much that you guys are doing and organizing and coordinating, and from the volunteerism to paid positions, and you got college kids coaching and all sorts of different things. And what made you want to bite off on this?
Well, it didn't exist in that way at the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really just started. It was kind of like really a funny story. Ultimately, it's just like you. As I was a dad with I have 2 boys.
Yeah.
And raising 2 boys in Flagstaff at the time were, I want to say 5 and 7 years old.
Yeah.
And so you do what parents do. You look for programs to put your kids in and what's out there, soccer and all the other stuff. But we like to mountain bike. And so I was like, is there any kind of mountain biking program we can get them into?
Yeah.
And of course, there was nothing back then. This was 7 years ago. There was hardly any youth programs in the country at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I, got to Google and did the whole Google search thing. And yeah, the only thing I saw Durango Devo come up, and I was like, and they were doing that push bikers all the way up to high school.
Okay.
And they were about 10 years old at the time. So they kind of have 10 years in front of us. And I was like, man, that would be really cool to have something like what they were doing. Just blew my mind. I thought it would be so awesome. And Flagstaff is so perfect for it. There's trails accessible all over town.
Yeah.
The geography is very similar. And so it was just kind of started out as fun with my kids, just playing around. We should start a program like this. And then we started toying around with names. And I was a pilot at the time, so I'm a big acronym person. so I came up with like FLYRS, Flagstaff, or Flagstaff Youth Riders, FLYRS. And then once we kind of settled on a name, we're like, wow, that's really cool. It sounds cool.
You got to do it.
And that's really how it happened. So we started a group with my 2 boys and then some of their friends. It was a group of 7 kids in the summer of 2016.
Okay.
And we got them shirts. They're like the, print on shirts. We did our own shirts and had FLYRS shirts and everything. And then the word got around that was like, that was really cool. Like Facebook was around, so we put posts on Facebook, and then before you know it, everyone's asking like, are you going to have another program? Are you going to have more stuff? Are you going to do it next year?
Yeah.
And that's been the story ever since. Are you going to have more? Are you going to do this? And it's just been this constant like growing organically to really feed the demand, because people are like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I knew that was like, one of the biggest challenges when we first found out about it is like, good luck getting in, right? But you guys have worked to expand that and worked to add Like, so you actually, even this season, are with just starting, do you feel like you met the demand pretty evenly, or do you feel like it still has some room to grow?
I feel like we got really close this year.
Okay.
Yeah. Like
Is this kind of the closest year, maybe?
Yeah. Well, really since COVID, that's when it changed dramatically. Before then, we were kind of putting out enough stuff that like the little network of friends and people that knew about us, I feel like could get in for the most part.
Yeah.
We'd maybe have a small wait list. And if it was small enough, I could be like, well, maybe I could do like one more day, and we'd like make it happen somehow. And then when COVID hit, it was like, wow, this is different. All the ball sports were shut down. Soccer, it wasn't even going. Like everything was shut down.
Yeah.
And parents obviously were kind of like scared. We weren't sure how to navigate the situation. And we were like, well, mountain biking is very socially distanced. And I think everyone gravitated to that. And there was just a dramatic shift all of a sudden in COVID. Like it was just like overnight. I was like, wow, what happened? There's no way that we can accommodate all the people that want to be in our program now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, was it a bit of a double up effect too, in the sense of your program was maturing and getting more out there, as well as then that shift of activities during the pandemic, to the extent, I guess, now with ball sports and everything else happening right now, have you seen some attrition, or have you has it stabilized or plateaued a little bit, or growth? Where does it sit now?
Yeah, I think the jury's still out on that for sure. Because it's been that too. We've increased our capacity so significantly. Yeah. That, and then in 2019, so I was doing it part-time before. I used to be a pilot, and I would fly, and when I was spending time in airports or airplanes or hotels, I would kind of work on FLYRS and everything else that I was doing. And then I took a leave of absence, and in 2019, I was like full-time FLYRS. So I was able to completely dedicate to FLYRS and really ramp up capacity then. Yeah. So that's kind of what started to be able to offer a lot more than we previously were. So it was kind of that and COVID all coalescing at the same time, so to speak. Yeah. But yeah, this year we really increased our summer programs, and then in fall we really increased them. Like we're in our first week now of fall programming, and so typically, last week we actually had a number of open spots, which has never happened in 3 years. Like the week prior to actually launching, we never had open spots, and we actually had a whole bunch of them. And we're actually kind of scratching our head a little bit, like, this is interesting. What happened here? And we've increased demand or capacity, and so I think the jury's still out on where the capacity demand equation lies.
Sure. Well, and yeah, I mean, it's hard to say in the sense of you see certain trends, right, with all sorts of different sports, right, and they have their high, like when I was young, like snowboarding was up and coming, like everybody was snowboarding, right? Yeah. And so, or wakeboarding. My friend sent me I'm a big wakeboarder. Yeah. And now that surfing's super huge, like my friend was making fun of me, like you're just like the double skis now, like no one does that anymore. And so, but mountain biking, where does mountain biking sit on that curve right now? Like, it doesn't seem like we're in this massive growth cycle. Like, it's more on this sustained cycle. Is that kind of, I mean, some industry experts would probably have a lot more to say about it, but what's your feel on that?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think what really revolutionized the sport and the uptick was through the youth mountain biking in NICA in specific, the National Interscholastic Cycling Association, and them really expanding and getting into all these different states and all these different high schools and middle schools across the country. I mean, if you look at NICA numbers, they're just off the charts of getting youth in mountain biking, and it's super accessible. Like, there's no tryouts. Anyone can be on the team. Anyone can race. And so that model, a lot of people jumped into that model, and they just made it so much more accessible and being at all the schools, right? Yeah. So if you look at what they've done in their participation rates, and we have our own version in Arizona. It's ACA, Arizona Cycling Association, because some of these states have kind of broken off and formed their own thing for various reasons, and they have similar growth profile. Like when we started maybe 6 or 7 years ago, they're like a few hundred kids, and now they're like 1,000+ kids. Okay. And those numbers are starting to, basically did this like shoo, and now they're kind of hovering at that top level. The growth numbers aren't as astronomical as they used to be. I think we're at that phase where it's like, okay, the massive growth has happened, and now what? And there's a lot of other things happening on the pro side of stuff, like gravel is getting super popular, and gravel events in the US are super popular, and there's actually pros that can race those, and some can make a living where that didn't used to be the case.
Wow, yeah.
So there's more of just like maybe you can do this, and like a few from the States maybe you can go to the Olympics, and that's about the only thing you could do. There might be more opportunities on the top end too. So that will help. Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting for sure.
Definitely. Well, and this, and you think about it too, there's an evolution, and just at least anecdotally, in just seeing also what's, like you're talking specifically, there's mountain biking as a whole, but then specifically to youth. And then me being that, like, I am that gear dad, right?
Yeah.
I want to get my kids out, like, on the sports and things that I love, like ASAP, and then giving them. My wife always just makes fun of me of like it's a gear family situation where like she's like, why are you buying me this stuff kind of thing, and so where I always want to make sure they have like full capacity to do their best on stuff. And so I've always been as I've watched like even just the technology available to kids too, like as bikes have evolved, and then that's trickled down to smaller sizes in what's available to youth now at all sorts of different levels and budgets is pretty phenomenal. Like, I don't think that's existed ever before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's also, it plays into it, right? That people are looking, there's demand for, especially on that higher end too, right? There is demand for higher end, and racing performance and stuff in youth packages as well.
Yeah. I mean, just the bikes out on the market now are so much different, so much more widespread, and youth bikes in particular, making youth specific bikes with geometry that makes youth more capable on bikes, e-bikes, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we didn't bite that bullet with my kids. The wife was excited about that one, but my kids are trying to push me on a 20-inch e-bike.
20 inch. Do they make those? Oh my gosh, really?
Oh no, it's a 24. It's a 24.
Oh wow!
And they're like, Dad, we'll be able to ride with you. And I was, the price tag was a little much. That's like, you can learn to pedal like I did.
So that's actually another interesting piece of the equation. We're finding out too, because we have a lot of school-based programs. We're in the schools, and we wanted to try and do that to have our programs be more accessible, because it's a big hurdle to buy all this equipment, and economically, fundamentally, logistically, it's super challenging for a lot of families. And so we've made a point to try and make it more accessible by being in schools with all the equipment, free programs. And what we're finding is there's a lot of kids at all like ages that you wouldn't have even middle school level, that don't even learn how to ride a bike anymore. And I think it's because I think it's maybe like one little theory or surmising kind of thing, is that there's just all this other equipment out there. There's scooters, there's motorized scooters, there's one wheels, there's all kinds of stuff. So kids get a hold of those. Maybe they don't, because they can learn how to ride a bike. Used to be now you got freedom, you could cruise, you can go around everywhere. And now there's all these different modes of transportation that are available to them to kind of get out and cruise around. So it's interesting how many kids don't learn how to ride a bike as much as they used to now. Yeah.
No, and it's amazing. I don't know, not to fanboy out on it too much, is just one quick anecdotal story to where, my mom, so they were at the time, so this is several years back, so early 60s, and my dad's a big cyclist, and my mom was, hadn't had a bike for a while, and was thinking I'd like to get back into biking and like go, just go on errands and things and ride this bicycle around. And they're up in Utah, where it's, fairly similar. I lived in the Netherlands for a little bit, and biking's awesome when it's flat, right? You can go everywhere. But in this mountain climate, it's a little different. And so anyways, so my dad was like looking at cycling bikes and different things, like trying to find some used, Craigslist bike for it. And we went to the bike store, put her on, and she hadn't ridden for a while, and threw her on, do you know the brand Gazelle?
Yeah.
Beautiful bikes, especially when they're out of the Netherlands. They're from the Netherlands. So, totally. And they had this Gazelle e-bike, and like, I'll never forget when she like cruised down the street and back, and it's just like that same, like you're talking about, when kids get on a bike and they can ride it, and it's freedom, right? And it's fun, and it's enjoy, and it's like this, it enhances your abilities, and it's just, like enjoyable all at the same time with a little bit of exercise and perspiration, right?
Yeah.
But the e-bike took care of the, some age gap there. And it reminded me of like, and it was funny because then we ended up working the deal out, getting the bike, and she, was riding it all the time. But when we took it home, we had everyone, like we had a lot of family over. So adults, men and women, jumping on this e-bike, cruising it up the hill, and like grins ear to ear, right? And not just focusing on the e-bike side of things, but biking in general just really brings out, it just brings out a happiness in people, like a joy.
Yeah. And that's, there's a lot of debate on e-bikes and stuff.
Yeah,
but,
so not going too far on the e-bike.
Well, no, I think that's one of the really cool things about them is they can experience all that really cool pieces of biking. Maybe it is actually it makes it more accessible because my mom got one, and we've been on trips, on vacations where we're like, we want to ride, but maybe the trails aren't close or whatever. And someone will just be like on the corner, depending on where with selling a bunch of e-bikes or renting a bunch of e-bikes. And we've like picked them up, and then we go on this huge ride that we otherwise wouldn't have because we can cruise so fast, and the kids love it and it's fun. Yeah. So it's just a different mode of being on a bike. So I don't know.
Absolutely. But really going into that, like, do you see that, especially with kids that don't have the access to this, right? So in my mom's example of her age and then the e-bike solution, but with other kids that in your school programs that don't have access to the equipment, again, and some of it can be economically restrictive. Do you see kids really latch on to that and experience that joy of biking, or is it, if they're not so connected to it, is it kind of frustrating a lot?
I would say we see it because we, like this summer we did a summer camp program at the bike park at Fuente. Yeah. And there's all different kinds of kids with all different kinds of abilities ranges. And some of them didn't even know how to learn to ride a bike. And so, we're teaching them how to learn to ride essentially. And you could see there's still like, it's the coolest thing in the world to learn. That's never going to go away, I don't think, to learn how to ride a bike. And all of a sudden, you try and you struggle, and then all of a sudden you're pedaling and you take off. I don't know. There's just something that's super cool about that because it fires everything, like overcoming the challenges, getting out of your comfort zone, all of that stuff. I don't know. It's hard to, that's always going to be really beneficial and super huge, I think, for sure.
And I think it's
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. Totally did. Well, and I think it's good to, and I know when I was sitting going in that coaching room, when I had to sit through all of these different, to sit through orientation where I was learning more of this like history and back end. So, I'll ask you because you're the pro here on it. But what was interesting to me too is for people to understand this is not a race program. Yes, there's racing associated with it, but there's other deeper aims of the program in general. So maybe if you want to speak to a moment of like why you created the program that way and why is that? It seems like I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it seems like there's some core heart in that, right? On why you did what you did, and that this isn't just some hardcore like race program. So what are the aims of FLYRS then? And then with all the different things that we already talked about with school programs and this whole pedal to high school, like how's that embodied by them, the program in general there?
Yeah. And that's, good that you brought that up because some people actually think that we're a race program and like, whoa, we're so like we'd never even had a race team for the first few years of FLYRS. Yeah. And our middle school team is the only team we've had up until this year. We started another kind of racing team, but 90+% of FLYRS is completely non-racing. And even the middle school team, they don't have to race. So, it's really all about like right now in particular, I think biking, like we said, learning to ride a bike and everything about riding in general is everything that kids should be doing, need to be doing, especially in this time frame when we look at our kids and they're on devices and there's all these like stimuli and parameters set up that they don't do everything that FLYRS and riding a bike provides, right? And it's amazing too, like just getting outside, getting active, getting out of your comfort zone, overcoming challenges. Like that's what it's all about, is providing the space for kids to do all those things that are super valuable life lessons you're going to take away forever. For me, it's all about like the more uncomfortable you can get and get out of your comfort zone and overcome challenges, like the more equipped you are to deal with everything, right? And especially as an adult, and if we can hit kids when they're young too, and just provide that. So, and it's so many things I could go on for. It's an outlet too. I mean, school and whatever. There's just so much craziness happening. Social media. It's basically just. It's everything.
Yeah.
Just getting away from all that stuff and into everything that's good, providing that space. You can be on a bike, connect with nature, and just get away from all the chaos that is out there right now.
Yeah. Well, and outside of our monsoon rain season that we're dealing with right now, is like Flagstaff is such a great environment for it. You think, it's at least to me, Flagstaff is a major mountain biking hub, right? And especially like with Sedona, like Sedona is like a mountain biking mecca, right there. And even though the program doesn't necessarily travel down there just yet, but in going through, like, for kids to be able to get out there and experience what is a significant part of Flagstaff, and what I've found in my experience is the program meets kids where they're at. Yeah. Right. Like all the coaches, and even in our little program when I first started, and we were doing the middle school boys program just this last spring, and we do that mild, medium, spicy situation. Yep. So for those listeners, and basically, when I thought it was fun, because, you have kids that, we'd all come together, and then they'd choose which group they wanted to ride with, the faster, the middle, or the more paced group. And and I thought it was kind of fun sometimes that some kids, you could tell that they just had a crap day at school, right? And they'd come and they had a crap day at school, and they're like, I'm not riding the spicy group this time. And it was cool. It was cool. It's like, hey, come have a more chill ride. Enjoy nature and enjoy being on your bike. And then other times, they'd come and that same kid would say, hey, I want to challenge myself. I'm going to try. And they'd ask me, like, Coach, do you think I could do this group? You're like, yeah, go for it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so it's really cool. It's been cool. And both that experience, and then seeing my kids were going through their coaching experiences where they've never come home and said, like, oh, coaches, tell me I was doing a terrible job or anything, or it's just very much me and the kids were that. And so I think it's just, super positive. I can't say enough good things about it, but anything else you want to say on the aims there?
Well, that's another, you bring up another point, you could go on and on about, like, I could never stop about, like, why I think it's so cool and all the benefits. And just, to me, that's pretty big, is meeting kids where they're at whatever level. Yeah. And there's always going to be massive levels. And like, don't get me wrong, like, I love ball and puck sports. When I was a kid, I was infatuated with them. That's all I ever did. I played baseball up through to high school. But it's totally different. You play a certain position, you're in a certain space, you may or may not play much in the game. Like, a lot of it is kind of outside of your control to some sense. And what we do in FLYRS and mountain biking in general, it provides a completely different space where it's entirely upon your control. You always get to ride.
And no one's on the bench.
No one's on the bench. If you're on a racing team, you can race or not. And then as coaches, you can tailor, like we said, mild, medium, spicy. You can tailor each practice to hit each kid where they're at, to hit all the different skill levels. So there's a lot more optionality there, and it's just a totally different space too than a lot of other stuff. So
exactly. Well, and so going back to kicking into this full gear, full time, how often are you riding?
It depends on the time of year. Right now it's quite a bit because of the teams. Yeah. So I coach the FLYRS middle school middle school team, not race team. I coach them one day a week now. In the past, it's been more, and I'm also coaching with Flag High. I coach with them a couple days a week-ish, depending on my schedule. So now in this season, it's, just with riding as a coach, it's quite a bit. And these are generally fast kids, so we're riding pretty quick. Yeah. My kiddo's on the Flag High team as a freshman, so I'm having a lot of fun riding with them for the first time this year.
Gotcha.
So in season, it's quite a bit. I try and make a point to ride a lot myself, because if I don't ride pretty consistently, my family doesn't necessarily enjoy me as much. I'm the person that needs to get out and ride to,
like it. Yeah.
you know, to make sure I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, for sure.
And I like to race myself too, just to put, like I said, when I was a kid, I was competitive and played a bunch of different things. And now as an adult, I like to not only just be competitive, if I put something on the calendar, it's like, okay, I got to make sure that I'm covering my bases here. I'm getting out and riding. I'm staying in shape. All those kinds of things. So.
Keep some good focus and balance in life. And that's, again, another rad thing about it too, is that it's something that these kids, like I played football in high school. I am not padding up or haven't padded up in over a decade. Yeah. And so it's just, loved the experience, learned a lot, just through that sports culture and competitive, sports, but, and team sport aspect, but, biking, you'll do forever.
Yeah. And that's the other big thing, is trying to just but try and just instill this, like, all the benefits that we talked about is a lifelong endeavor, and you can just, enjoy it more and more as you get older. I've still, up until, I hope now, but I had a little clavicle fracture, but I was getting faster and faster still as I aged, which was pretty neat. Doesn't always happen. So
how's that feeling right now?
It's good.
The clavicle's okay?
It's good.
It's a little funky for a while.
It is, yeah. Getting used. I got the plate and the 6 screws, so that's the biggest thing, is just having the hardware on there on your. Yeah. Getting used to all that. It doesn't.
Little biking training accident, right?
Yeah. It was. Yeah, FLYRS coach training of all things. It happens.
It happens. Yeah. Well, and to get a quick idea of scope, for those of folks not as familiar, how many? Let's talk total coaches and volunteers that are running the program, in like because I know your summer versus your fall versus spring are all kind of different packages there. But as far as like a fall and spring kind of typical FLYRS program, how many volunteers, employees, like how was it taking to run?
Yeah, the volunteer number. So most of our coaches, maybe in the 80 to 90% range, are actually paid.
Okay.
So they're paid coaches, which is kind of neat. We've always had a good relationship with any cycling club, so it's kind of been like a little nice gig for them, for both of us. And then more recently, we've had like junior high school coaches come on, and now we're getting kids that have been in our program come back as coaches. So it's like this full circle, which is super cool. Yeah. So the majority of our coaches are paid, and this year we're getting close to like 100 coaches.
Wow.
Yeah, and total program wide over the year, like total registrations is getting very close to 1,000 kids this year. Wow. And each season is kind of generally around a few hundred, give or take. So right now in the fall, there will be a few hundred in our program, close to that in summer and the spring. And then we've got other things outside of that. But
okay.
Yeah. So very, very big.
Growing from like 2-3 adults and 7 kids or something.
Yeah. Massive. Every year it was just pretty exponential. And now it's definitely winding down. It kind of had to, just because of the numbers were getting so big and it's getting so hard to manage, which is good. But
gotcha.
Yeah, we were growing, like first we were doubling, and then we were growing at like only 50%.
Okay, yeah.
And this year might be like a 20% ish growth versus last year. I think last year we were around like 800 or so.
Gotcha. So from a nonprofit management aspect of things, it's getting to maybe more of a livable pace.
Yes, for sure.
Breathable pace.
Yeah. I mean, we're a nonprofit and a nonprofit organization, and people might have different ideas of what that looks like. But really the space that we've been in with that astronomical growth, it's really like a startup. I mean, and you're kind of figuring it out on the fly. At first it was like all me, and then bringing in all these coaches. And now we have a staff of 400 coaches. It's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And what, just going back from that, because that's a lot from, and I loved how we talked about that, from just like brainchild to actual conception. And then here we are 7 years later, right? It's admirable in a lot of, whether it's a business or a nonprofit, anyone can brainstorm, and everyone does, right? How many people write a little name on a napkin and think this would be awesome, and then move on with their life, versus like, really making something happen. It's huge. What would you say, looking behind you, and then we'll look ahead, What would you say behind you was the biggest challenge?
Oh, there was so many. To highlight one would be most difficult because it was,
or maybe a couple, 2 or 3.
Yeah, I mean, there was such a big learning curve, right? Like I was a professional pilot. I was a commercial airline pilot.
Yeah.
And so running a program like this, it's like the nonprofit side, the business side, just because of so much of it was foreign. I think that would be the general theme in the biggest challenge was like everything was foreign.
Yeah.
And how do I figure out the pieces of this? How do I take this idea and execute it? And the risk model too. So after that first group of 7 kids, the next year when we were like, okay, we can do all these other groups and make it more of a thing, then we actually started an LLC to kind of like house the liability. And everyone we talked to was like, that's really cool what you want to do. Sounds amazing, but here's all the risks and the liabilities. And you're crazy for even thinking about doing this.
Yeah.
And so it's like overcoming that and the risk and the challenge and how do we keep kids safe.
Sure.
I can't like just put my finger on anyone because it was all so foreign and it was all seemed like a lot, really.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the tough part, right? And I guess it probably seems annoying, but rightly so, of like just going out with a buddy and some of your kids and getting to go on a ride is one thing, but then when you're taking other people's kids out in an organized fashion and with the legality, the safety, all the certain types of certifications and trainings. And it's like, okay, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So yeah, I know as far as like, I was like, oh, I send my kids out, here's these coaches. It's great. And they go on a ride, but then having to go through on the coaching side and then like even stepping through like the level 1 ACA hoops, it's like, oh no, it's like, kid safety and sports psychology and concussion and like, to go on a bike ride, but it's important.
Yeah, and that was the biggest thing is like, so we've got all these ideas of what this looks like or what we want to do, and just putting together the organizational structure, right? To have that, to facilitate all those coaches, to make sure they're safe, to make sure they know what they're doing, all the trainings. And for me, like since I have kids in other sports too, and being kind of very intentional about like if we're going to do this and be another youth organization, like, and we already stand out as a mountain bike organization, we're already super different. How are we going to stand out in other ways? Like we want to be like very professional, and some may or may not be the same way. Some like you sign up and it starts in like a week and you still don't know what your schedule is going to be. You don't know when your kids are going to practice. And we're like, we're not none of that. We're like, they're going to know what they're signing up for. So try and run it as professional as we can so that we'll stand out that way too. Like when people think of FLYRS, it's like, man, they're very well organized and maybe different. 'Cause we're already different because we're mountain biking. So just trying to figure out all those pieces and try to be very intentional about everything we do and very organized. I think that sounds cool, but actually putting that together is very challenging. Still to this day, there's still things that pop up that we're like, okay, how do we navigate this, or what do we do about this? And
well, and it's I mean, when you're talking about then like between coaches and kids and youth, like over 1,000 people that you're trying to get in some direction and manage locations and weather issues, and it's a lot. It's a lot. So
and that's the other thing. We're not in one space. Like we're not on a field all the time. We're managing. Some groups will go to like 5 or 6 different places throughout the week. So
7 years and no kids lost.
There's a lot of moving pieces.
No, that's awesome. And what would you say then? Like looking ahead, what do you think your greatest challenge is?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the greatest challenge is where do we go from here?
Defining where we go.
Really, because a lot of the kind of pie in the sky stuff that we initially thought of, like we could probably look like this or do this, it really kind of led up to here. Like if you were to rewind the tape, because I looked at that Devo program and they were kind of around the same thing, 100 coaches, 1,000 kids, and it blew my mind. And I was like, wow, what if FLYRS could be there someday? And so it was like putting all the wheels in motion, not necessarily to do that, but to kind of do it in the way that we did it organically, what made sense to grow in the right ways, etc. And we put together a business plan, and it really kind of led up to this space where we are now.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing, really. Like, well, I think we still need to figure that out. Like, where do we go from here? What makes the most sense from us? I think a lot of it is the school. We're finding, like, with the school programs, that's huge. Is just, and continuing to create access in more ways, being in more schools. We're going to do some learn to ride programs. So that's kind of one of the biggest things I know for sure is fleshing out. And those programs, since they're all free and we need equipment, those cost money. So we write a bunch of grants, and so those will be very involved if we want to grow a lot in that way.
Yeah.
Because we have, a lot of our traditional programs are fee for service programs where we generate revenue, but then we've got all those other free programs where it takes grants and our wonderful sponsors and individual donors to kind of step up and make those things happen.
Sure.
So if that's an area that we want to continue to grow in, it'll require more funding and more grants and more sponsors and more events and more community engagement and all those things. Yeah.
And if you don't mind my asking on this, I maybe should ask you before I am, but let's see, we can always edit out if we need to. But from how much of FLYRS is ran through local sponsorship? So outside of the grants, the revenue generating activity, because it's fee for service on some of the different activities that kids are in camps that kids are signing up for, how much does local sponsorship play into to your program? Do you know, like a percentage?
Yes. If we're talking sponsors alone, I'd probably say maybe in the 10 to 15% range.
Okay.
It's a good number.
Yeah. Is it where you want it to be?
Definitely. No, I'd like it to be a little bit more.
Sure.
And that's a tough thing too, is just to kind of bridge those. And that's why we're getting out this year too. We've getting out and doing more community events and getting more involved. And I think that'll help bring in some more community partners too.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing that as a nonprofit, a lot of nonprofits have all kinds of different events and different ways they engage the community.
Sure.
And since our bandwidth has always been just like, what can we do? Like, what can we pull off? We're always so limited.
Yeah.
We specifically hired someone this year, a fundraising manager, to kind of help get those more events and things that we wanted to do off the ground so we can engage with and just get some cool bike events out there, right? We had another one of the many ideas we had is just to have a whole bunch of cool bike events, not only our programs, but events that the whole community can be a part of.
Yeah. Just did that. Well, and it was kind of your season launch / film night, right?
Yeah.
Were you happy with the turnout? It seemed like there was a lot of folks there.
There was, yeah. It was a good turnout. We've been doing like the kickoff to the season event, spring kickoff, fall kickoff now for a little bit. And this one, sometimes we like to get a little overzealous. And so this one, we did that by tagging that kickoff event on with like a movie night. Also, awareness fundraiser for the local ACA teams that are going to race in the ACA series and march their way towards the state championship.
Yeah.
So it was neat though. It was cool. There was a good turnout on all sides, and the teams were involved, and we got to raise. I think we raised over $1,000 for the teams that will evenly distribute through the 5 teams.
Yeah.
The movie, we had a little bit of some difficulties there that we'll have to kind of reset and see if we can go again with that one.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But the event itself, I think, was good. Yeah.
I love it.
I mean, the weather was looking like it may not even happen.
Yeah.
And the clouds and the skies parted for our event. So it was cool.
Yeah. No, and just to see, I mean, we were there until my kids expired pretty early, so we didn't make the movie, but it was just great community. All right. And there's so many people that just love biking, and you're running into, like, I have a bunch of professional partners that I'm running into. It's like, we all bike. So we share that in common. Right. So it's just like, we have community together and we have recreation together. It's just, Flagstaff works really, really well in that community aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And now I think that's the other kind of big space that we've changed is before there was, the last few years, maybe not everyone knew about FLYRS. And I was like, oh, there's still a lot of people that know about FLYRS. And I was kind of surprised. And now it's like less and less and less and less. I love it. I love it. Getting out there. Yeah. Well, I have a fun, really quick to wrap on a couple of things. I have a fun deep dive to do with you here. What we do with our guests sometimes, we jam on your social media for a little bit and grab some pictures that you can maybe explain for us so we can get to know Tyler and FLYRS a little bit better. So we got 4 pictures for you. Okay. Oh,
these up on the
these are
screen.
okay.
I had to dig
Not just
not super
FLYRS.
deep.
You're gonna,
Yeah.
wow.
We were jumping on there. So can you explain what's going on in this picture here?
Well, that's me riding down the stairs, and that is my youngest kiddo. Actually, maybe now I'm trying to think if this is the time frame, but that was my youngest. So me riding down the stairs, and he's watching me, and those stairs are like,
They're pretty steep.
They're steep, and we gotta. The way into our house is up there. Those stairs drove me nuts. So I was kind of like captioning like, this is the only thing that I like about these stairs is that I can ride down them.
Nice. So I love that you're a little bit of a thrill seeker yourself on that. And
and it's tight in there. There's walls on both sides. Like,
yeah, that's technical
once you
props.
get in there, yeah.
Technical props. All right. I'm curious to know about this one more. So I know being involved with the program a little bit about this, but yeah, tell me about the Greg Nelson Challenge.
How much time do we have left? No, I mean, you could. So the Greg Nelson's my dad, and the Greg Nelson Challenge, that's at Snowbird Ski Resort, and so there used to be a hill climb, like back in the early days of mountain bike racing. They used to do hill climbs. They didn't do them anymore because who wants to just climb up a hill and not go back down?
Yeah,
and you're just gonna be timed on the uphill. But that's what it was. Just climb up this ski resort. Like 3,000 foot climb in 5 miles. It's just brutal. On the cat track
up to Hidden Peak.
Yeah. Yep. So he did that every year, and he was a mountain biker. Unfortunately, I wasn't a huge mountain biker when he was. Yeah. And then he got brain cancer and passed away. And that spawned the Greg Nelson Challenge. So he did it, I think the first year that they ever put it on, he was 40. And he was mountain biking, and it was like, perfect, right? I'm going to test my vitality. I'm 40, awesome thing to do. And then he proceeded to do it every year for like 15 years or something crazy in a row. So then when he passed, me and my sister, that's my family there, my sisters, I have 3 sisters. We all kind of took it upon us and dedicated that we're going to keep doing this ride in his honor. And we dubbed it the Greg Nelson Challenge, and proceeded to do it like 7 years in a row.
Okay.
First year we ever, and it's like, first year I did it, I was like, just don't be last. I was like 4th or 5th to last, walking on big chunks of it because it was steep and loose. And my only goal was to I'm going to do this. Well, not my only goal. I'm a little more ambitious than that. Yeah. Was to ride the whole thing without walking. But then I also took it to the next level. I'm going to win this one year. Never did win it, but I think I got like 3rd or 4th place one year. And I definitely did the whole thing without putting my foot down.
I like it.
You could say, and my dad and everything that happened as a result of doing that race spawned the whole mountain biking thing for me. And you could even go so far as to say maybe even FLYRS was a result of all that as well. So it means a lot to me.
Yeah, I love it. And then you continue to do a Greg Nelson Challenge every year, right? With the FLYRS group, right?
Yeah, we put out like a little Greg Nelson Challenge during COVID, like kind of choose your own challenge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everyone, like a virtual challenge when people were doing those things, choose your own challenge. And then we like to create some kind of challenge in that honor with like our middle school team and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. All right, next one.
There's the kiddos.
Family affair. I thought it was fun.
Yep. So that's them both on the middle school team last year at one of the middle school races. That's Tarek is my older son who's on Flag High now in the maroon there, and my younger son Keelan in the green FLYRS jersey. He's a soccer kid. He's an awesome mountain biker, but he kind of comes and goes on how much interested he is in mountain biking.
So and that's what's kind of fun is seeing the motivation, at least from the outsider perspective. There's some pull and push. Impact here, right?
Yeah,
so sure. That's cool. That's really, really
even
cool.
Tarek, like, it's funny to see what they go through because mountain biking, it's not like some other sports where it's just all fun and games. It's like it's hard.
Oh yeah,
and it's hard for kids, and even thinking about it sometimes it's hard. Like, that's hard. Like, and that's why I love it. But so it's different for sure. And even Tarek, he was. Even like up until like a year or two ago, sometimes it'd be hard to get him to want to go on a ride with me. Sure. And now he's just super motivated, gets out there, rides on his own all the time, and it's really fun. Yeah.
I love it. Love it. And got last one here. The Puente launch.
Yeah, the Puente Bike Park. This was years in the making. The principal that was there a long time ago, pretty much right when we started FLYRS, our kids both went to Puente.
Okay.
And we were just talking about, he's like, oh, it'd be so cool to have some trails here. And that's like was the initial vision. And they showed us all this wooded space behind their school that was fantastic. And once I walked around, I was like, oh, wow, this could be really neat.
Yeah.
And so that idea was out there forever. And then there's actually a program that we're another awesome youth mountain bike program down in the Verde Valley called Verde Valley Wheel Fun.
Okay.
They may have changed their name to Verde Valley Fun now. They did a bike park with Matt Roberts of Flagline Trails, who's also a FLYRS sponsor out in Flagstaff.
Okay.
He kind of designed and built a bike park for them. And once I saw that, then the wheels really started spinning. And it was like, oh, if we could have something like this at Puente, it would be really cool. And so huge project, a lot of pieces to figure out, money to raise, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, we did it. And it's an awesome space now.
Super cool space.
It's really cool. And it's awesome. It's super accessible. The whole community can access it outside of school hours, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then it's a great space for FLYRS and to run our programs and for coaches.
Yep.
Because it's everything, like in terms of teaching skills, we can do the whole look through at Puente. Like we could show them in a static environment. We could take it to like a skill feature that's at the park. And then we can even maybe take it on the trail, because those are kind of the whole progression of the ways you would teach skills. And we can do that entire progression at Puente. It's really cool.
Love it. Major project, major accomplishment. It is a rad park. It was fun because we're on the west side of town and we'd always go to the bike park over here, which is also rad. It's awesome that we have that resource as well. And then, and as you'd gotten and Puente and everything going, and we were excited about it, but just hadn't actually ridden it with my kids.
Yeah.
And then, and I'm sorry to say that I didn't ride it until I started coaching last season. And I was like, when we were there, I was like, and then my kids had rode it too. And they're like, Dad, we got to go back. So like the next Saturday, like we were back there, like watching them hit the drops and things. And so, amazing. It's really cool. People haven't checked it out. They really should.
Yeah. And it's different. It's so much different than traditional bike parks. This one was really built like for the beginner in mind, right? Yeah. So the young kiddos can jump on to a lot of that stuff early on and have a blast and do the drop progression without getting overwhelmed. Or the flow trails. They can have super fun on the flow trail. Anyone can have fun on those flow trails. Like,
oh, for sure.
You don't need a lot of experience to get on them, but like I have a blast on those things. They built them so well. They're awesome.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Well, awesome, Tyler. Any closing thoughts that you have on FLYRS or getting word out to the public?
I don't think so. It's our first week of FLYRS, so sometimes it's kind of takes people back when there's some of the trailheads are like flooded with kids.
Sure.
I'd say be patient with that. Yeah. They're all out there doing what I think we all want to see them doing, which is get outside and stuff. So I say just get out and ride.
I love it. Awesome. Thanks for coming, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.